Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show that talks about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection with that which is bigger than us, of profound moments, of life-altering perspectives, shifts in directions, 90-degree turns, and all the good stuff, and gather around the campfire and share those stories and hope to inspire each other to another day, another potential, another amazing destiny. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love having these conversations with people. It's my favorite thing to do. You know, it's kind of like once you woke up and you got your journey and you got on your path and you're feeling good and aligned and everything's working, you just want to help other people to get there too, because it's just like more fun. The more the merrier. So I love having these conversations. I always meet a lot of really interesting people because my brain, my reticular activating system in my brain is geared towards identifying people that have cool stories to share. And so then I get to bring more cool people on to share cool stories that wake us all up. So today is no different. We have a wonderful guest that I met at a podcasting conference, and I was so impressed by his story. I was like, yeah, I'm going to bring Harry on the show, Harry Duran. And so welcome to our show. Harry is the founder of FullCast, which is podcast production and marketing consultancy. And he helps brands and high-performing entrepreneurs to amplify their authority and extend their reach through the power of podcasting. You know, podcasting is such a new trend, and not a lot of people know about it yet. We're still at the, very beginning of this. So, Harry loves podcasts because also I love them, and you become what's called a podcast junkie when you like it that much. And he's actually the host because he saw ahead that people would become junkies. And so he created a podcast called Podcast Junkies, and it's been on iTunes since 2014, which is actually really early on in the podcasting history of this evolution of this new industry. So he's had conversations with over 200 interesting and engaging podcast personalities. So he's interviewed Chase Reeves, Pat Flynn, Cliff Ravenscraft, and a whole bunch of other cool people. So just, check out his podcast, Podcast Junkies. There'll be a link in the show notes. You check it out. He just loves to help people find their voice, and that is like through this engagement, like long-term engagement with podcasts. So anyway, so he's on my show now. He's probably like critiquing everything I'm doing right now. He's shaking his head. So welcome, Harry. I'm so glad you're on the show.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm grateful to the universe for making the stars align, having me be at the right place at the right time so we could meet and you could hear me speak and have that be a signal for you to come back and talk to me and give me your awesome card, which I still have. Just happened, by the way. And so you're like, pick a card. Here's my business card with these cool things on the back. And I picked one out. And of course, where I was, and this is exactly the message I needed to hear. And so I know it's not video, but
it is actually.
Oh, no, it is going to be video.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it says you are sovereign. It's a bit worn on the edges, as you can see.
Because it keeps it in his pocket.
I still carry it in my wallet. So I have a little,
awesome.
My credit cards and stuff, and it's in there. And it's, I'm sure in some powerful way, it's bringing me even more abundance.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Well, I love handing those out because they're like my little business card tarot, you pull
good.
exactly the one you need, like when you have, so it's great. So now what really impressed me about you was that, well, first of all, you spoke from your heart, and that is something that's becoming more prevalent in this world, but it's something that up until now has not been as prevalent, people speaking from their heart and really engaged and passionate from their heart. And I really, when I find people like that, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to bring this person in because this is a person that's engaged from their heart. And you told a really powerful story. So I just want you to kind of share with us, your story of awakening. Like what was the powerful experience you had where you realized, whoa, I'm kind of like going off on a tangent in a direction that I'm not maybe meant to be. And I have something more important to do in the world, and I want to get to doing it. And you had that moment of wake up. Like, tell us your wake up moment.
Yeah, the story I told, the short version, is that when I got started on this entrepreneurial journey, I thought I wanted to, I thought I was going to be in corporate America forever. And I was just listening to different people, and I was taking guidance from a bunch of different people. And so like my parents are like, oh, you need to go to college. And I did that for a while, but that didn't pan out because when I got my first suit wearing job, I was like, oh yeah, I made it. It's official. I'm okay. I can just coast from here on in. And then my boss would tell me, he'd be like the next voice. He'd say, you know, your six-figure salary, like puts you in the top 10% of all income earners. And I was like, oh, that's even more validation. But there definitely was like this entrepreneurial seed sprouting. And so when the dot-com craze came, and I was like, oh, this is great. I cashed out my 401k to zero, which is bananas when you think about it now. But I was just like, oh, I don't need a 401k because I'm going to be a dot-com millionaire. And needless to say, that did not pan out the way I thought it would be, or we'd be having a different conversation. So I went back to corporate America, reconnected with what I call my corporate godfather, did that for a while again. And then the bug kept biting. So when I had a chance to go connect with my half brother who lived in Atlanta, he said, come down and help me with this construction company. I was working in like IT, like I was doing e-business type stuff. And I was like, construction? Yeah, sure, I could do that. So I went to Atlanta and literally like Carrie, it's like construction boots, hard hat, climbing scaffolds. I learned how to like do estimates on blueprints. So it was a really interesting experience. But you know, like they say about that, the old adage about working with family, like 2 years later, I was back on a plane with my tail between my legs, forced to go with my parents at like 34.
Which
You
is
know,
humiliating, right? Like people have this moment, a lot of people have this moment, especially with the economics of the times, where they got to go back and live at home, and it's like kind of demoralizing.
yeah, and I think, and then we're all on this, we all know, and I'm sure your listeners know that we're all on our separate journeys, and there is no right path, and we're on the ones that we chose. And part of my intentions in the morning are, I say, you create this life because you wanted to. So that was definitely my soul journey that still it continues to evolve. And so when I got back, one of the good things is that I happened to have bought a ticket to Thailand because a friend of mine was, you know, I had met him like 3 years ago and through some random set of circumstances. So I didn't have a job. I was back with my parents, but I was like, well, at least I can get to go to Thailand.
Yeah, plus
So
size, like icing on the cake, right?
yeah, so it was like a 26-hour trip. It was crazy. I had to do a plane, then a boat and a ferry. It was just bananas. So I get there. You know, he picks me up and I start riding scooters around the island. He's like, I want to take you to this waterfall. It's really awesome. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So we hike up to this like this hill, and there's like a beautiful waterfall, and there's an overlook that you can see the valley. And he's standing on like the other side of it. And he said, come over and look at the view from here. It's amazing. And I was like, yeah, of course. And so I step into the stream that's right at my feet, and I stepped on basically like the slipperiest rock you can imagine. It was just like stepping on the soap. So both legs go up in the air. I land on my back, and I proceed to be carried over the edge of the falls. This is happening like in seconds, like super fast. And I was like, I literally felt like helpless as I was like, I almost like felt like one of those paper boats that you fold up and you put them in the water when you're a kid, and you have it travel down to the sewer. Like that's how fast it was moving.
Wow.
Um, and then at the corner of my eye, I spotted like a boulder on the bank on the left. So just instinctually, I stuck my left leg out, which stopped me from going over the falls. And you know, my friend was like so paralyzed. He was like, later on, he told me, I was about to like jump on you. I didn't know what to do because it was just like everything was happening. This is like everything's happening within seconds. So he pulls me over. I'm like shaking. You know, we managed to make the best of it, and I was there for like another week. So we ended up having a good time. And it's just these things that you don't realize in the moment. But when I got back to New York, and then later on, as I grew in my journey, I was like, you know, what a shame it would have been if I had died with my voice inside of me.
Mm.
Like knowing what I know now, I was like, wow, like it's like I think I have a story to tell. And so I'm conscious of that experience, and that use that as a reminder. And that's why I mention it when I do public talks, because it's my mission now to help 1 million people find their voice. And you know, I don't know that I'm going to actually meet 1 million people, but if I connect with people who have audiences, they can connect to their 10,000 people or their 100,000 people. And then I think eventually I might have to readjust the number and make it 1 billion people because why not? You should just continue to aim higher.
Yeah, I agree with that. You should just continue to aim higher. And you're right. Like you influencing one person that has an audience of 10,000, that influences that 10,000 people because that one person you influence actually like used their voice and spoke up and like went and,
Yeah.
went for it.
Yeah, and I think when I give these talks, and I took a little bit of speaker training, what's really important for me is just to think about one person. So inevitably, I'll make eye contact with a couple of people, and as long as I see someone that's engaged in what I'm saying, that's fine. And then I always say at the end of the day, like if whether I'm speaking to like two people, I've given talks in like living rooms as well, so or like a couple of hundred or maybe even 1,000 in the audience, like I literally just want one person to say, hey, that thing you said like about like chasing your passion, like that really resonated with me, and thank you for that. And I'm like, okay, that's good. Like I don't need like everyone rushing the stage. And true to form, like in Austin at the Outlier Festival, I'm done talking, I go to the back, and who do I see making a beeline to the back of the room but you?
I was like, I got to talk to you. That was so inspiring because,
That's good.
I felt your heart, Harry. Like I really felt your heart. It felt you and your honesty and your authenticity, and like really that you had connection with that moment for yourself, that you really were still able to connect with that, and that it became an anchor for you actually in all the decisions that you're still making in your life. Like that is your anchor point. That's your big why, is that moment where that could have been it. Like, bam, your life's over.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's something that you think about, and you want to be consistent with that message with everything you do. And so it's just something that I'm learning, and I've had experiences now where I'm like, am I speaking from my true voice, or am I being the most honest in my conversations? And I, using that as a guide stone, like I've had instances where I'm just like, I've been like, people have talked to me and be like, well, are you being your most honest? Are you speaking from your true voice? And I'm like, no, you're right. Like that wasn't the best version of myself. And so it's like even a constant reminder for me to always be speaking my truth, because, there's conversations that I've had since then where I've like not been the best version of myself. And I'm like, okay, it's just room for improvement. And I think I'm always conscious of that and trying to be a better version of myself, and make sure that I'm not hurting people that I love and care about. And so it's been something, just like every soul here, like it's continuous evolving and trying to learn from our mistakes and be better.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you tell now? Like, what's your inner tell that you're coming from your authentic self? Well, how do you know that you're coming from your authentic self now?
I think what was important is, and this is like some recent, like, I guess in the spiritual world, they call them dark nights of the soul. Like I recently went through a divorce, and that when I think about my behavior towards the end of that, like there was so many ways I could have handled that better. And so the consistent theme was whenever I was acting from ego, I would inevitably make the wrong choice. And whenever I realized like what's the most heart-centered version of the thing that I can do in this moment, and respect the other people's sovereignty, and be the most honest person, and come from like y- wanting the best for the other person, like that's sort of like the gauge now, because I lost my way, I think, for a while. And I think it's important to be around people that can remind you of how important that is, and also to be challenging yourself when you think. And a lot of times people don't like being in relationships; they just want to be on their own. But sometimes you find out who you are truly, and where are the things that where you fall down. And sometimes that only comes when someone can shine the light on you, by being like showing the mirror.
Yeah, that mirror is hard to face sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is incredibly hard to face. And but I think if you realize that it's a learning opportunity, and if you have a strong connection to spirit that as your guide, and in the darkest parts of it, I would just be like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, I need help, like I'm on my knees, I'm like, I need help, God, like I've tried everything else. Like, and now I'm clumping up the bat phone. I'm dating myself with that.
The bad phone.
I'm dating myself with that reference, but I'm, but I'm just like, yeah. And the beauty of it is like that connection is always there, and that's why I always say like, there's no one that is gonna get in my way of my connection to source. I'm just like, if I need to, reach out and connect, and it's just like, I'm just gonna do it because I know it's there, and I just and just not doing it. And so and it's a reminder to do it. And when I get the help and I want to get a sign or something, that I'm grateful for it. And it's just a reminder to make sure that I have a daily practice so that I never take that connection for granted.
I love that. You never take that connection for granted, never take your life for granted. I love how your soul gifted you this like radical experience of, oh my God, I might die right now. I could have died. And because that's like your baseline now, it could be a measure of like, okay, if I just saved myself, if I couldn't do anything else, is this really what I want to be doing in every moment? You know, you can
Yeah.
put yourself back in there and say, is this BS or is this true?
Yeah, and you have to, it's discernment. This is something I've been digging into a lot about actual the definition of discernment, what it means, discerning whether something is true or not, whether it resonates with you or not. And I think I wasn't always sure that I had good discernment early on in my life, and I think it's something that I'm more conscious of. So I'm just trying to live a better version of myself in a way that does the least amount of harm to people now. And I'm about to turn 49, so I've got probably at least another half century to try to make sure that the second half of my journey here is just as beneficial to as many people as possible.
I love that. Yeah, I just turned 50 this year, so I right there with you, brother.
Yeah.
So now I also want to ask you, because what I notice when I interview people is that I actually learn a lot from interviewing people and having these conversations. And it's almost like I take myself just a little bit less seriously when my ego acts up,
Mm.
because it's like I know that come on, because I can kind of come on myself. Oh, come on, Carrie. Like, how many conversations are we going to have about this, right? How has that influenced you? All these interviews and all these learning about different people and sharing their voices and their stories, like, how has that shifted your perspective about your own journey?
I think there's a bit of a responsibility, and I'm not trying to say like it's like a world famous platform where like I've got like millions of listeners, but I do know that because it's super meta, it's a podcast about podcasting, and I speak to podcasters, and I go to podcasting conferences, and so it's just like this weird circle, infinity loop of like
There's an infinity loop.
meta podcasting, but when I go to the conferences, because it's a podcasting community, then I have people like, "Oh, I listened to your show. Like, I've heard you talk." And I remember one woman one time, she's like, "I love the sound of your voice. It's so soothing." And it was a bit awkward because her husband is there, and I'm just like, she's like, "Yeah, well, the other day I was playing your episode out loud, and I was like in my bedroom, and I was falling asleep to your episode." And, and she was like, her husband was there, and I was like, "Well, that's cool. Like, thanks." So,
Glad.
so yeah, but it's funny because in a way it's a bit of a responsibility to your audience too, especially if I'm not the best person at being consistent with content. I'll be the first one to admit, like, there's people that are really good every Monday, 7 o'clock in the morning. They've got their episode out, and with travel and things that life experiences, I definitely try to be more consistent. But I do realize that people are getting value of it out of it. So I'm conscious to be present in these conversations. And a lot of times they're the best part of my day or my week because it's a moment when I can slow down, connect with another human being. I love using video as well. So even though we use video, we don't publish it. We just use the audio. But almost all my conversations have been video, I think, with the exception of a couple because of the connection. And there's something special about eye-to-eye contact, about body language, about being able to ask pointed questions where there's a bit of silence on the other end, and you've asked the right question because that's like the person thinking about it. Like you see their eye go up, and you're like, that's a good question. It's like every podcaster's dream to say, for the guest to say, no one's ever asked me that before. Like yes, like
Yeah.
I'm really going deep, or I've never shared this before on a podcast. Or like, whoa, that's just good. So it's a skill, and I'm conscious of other people who do it well. I'm friends with Jordan Harbinger of the Jordan Harbinger Show. He's been had his podcast for like 10 years as the top 20 show, and just watching like Larry King or Terry Gross, or just listening to like Tim Ferriss or anyone that does a good job of getting deeper. Joe Rogan speaks for 3 hours, and he just has like a child's curiosity sometimes about these topics, which I think is interesting. So just being an eternal student of the craft of of interviewing, I think is really important. And just I'm always trying to get better and figure out how to make a more human connection, because it comes through, because people hear a podcast, and I always say it should feel like you're the third person in the room listening to, like eavesdropping in on the conversation, like Carrie and Harry are talking, and you pull up a chair. And it's like when you go to a public event or a conference, if you see two people in the corner of a room and you come over, there's that awkward couple of seconds, like, are they going to invite me into the conversation or not? Or am I going to have to like go find somewhere else to stand? And when you see that, you're like, oh, there's someone else here. Hey, welcome to our conversation. So to you, the listener that's listening, I thank you for joining us, having listened to Carrie and I ramble.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love that description you just gave, because that is kind of what it feels like. I think that's the thing that makes podcasting so appealing, is because these are conversations. And for me, they're really interesting conversations. Like every single time I have one of these, I learn something new about a person. I learn something new within myself. We explore another concept of, spirituality. So that's just what I love. And you just learn about yourself. And the cool thing about this is that I already learned, and it's already like done. Like my goodness is already here. Like I'm good if it never went
Hmm.
anywhere. But now I get to like expand it by sharing it,
Yeah.
which is fun.
I think for me, part of the impulse was like when I'm interviewed on other shows, naturally I'm a podcast host, so I'm just like I want to like switch and I'll start asking you questions,
I know,
because
right?
because that's just it's like the curse of the podcast. You're just like, well, but we'll have to just make sure that you get invited to Podcast Junkies, and then you can tell your story there.
Yeah, I can tell my story over there. Well, so I love these kind of conversations. And it sounds like you probably do love conversations as well. Like you love to connect with people, and you found a way to do it, you know, through this podcast format,
Yeah.
to have conversations and share that out with people. What are some of the things you love? Like, what's one of your favorite conversations that you've had that you've shared on your podcast?
Well, because I always say it's your show, so you can definitely do whatever you want. Like you're the station owner, like you're the host, you're the talent, you're the marketer, you're also the the sales, whatever it is, every single hat that you can think about that if you think about the radio days, like you're wearing all of them, which is good and it's bad, but at the end of the day, like there's really no one censoring your content, and you should be able to like let your personality shine. So a lot of times for me in the beginning, I was just weird about what I was saying, and I think we overthink in the beginning. And even some of the famous podcasters, like Pat Flynn is a pretty popular one. He sat on his first episode, I think, for like a year or a year and a half. Like he plays it when he speaks at conferences. He's like, it's super awkward because he's like, hey guys, it's me, and I'm doing this episode, and it's like he's so super nervous, super awkward, and he played some weird rock music that is not him at all. So, it's so, but it's so funny because we all start there, and no podcaster likes the sound of their voice when they first get started. But I think just lately, just because of like how I'm dialed in more to like spirituality, and I'm like, uh, I mean, if you want to go down a rabbit hole of like spirituality and start talking about ascension and multidimensional like beings and star seeds and all this other stuff and portals, like I will literally like
Well, let's do it. I mean,
we'll go. But just to answer that question, like I've been conscious of just having more conversation like that on my show. Like I've had my friend Katie Krimitsos is on a couple like now it's probably like a year ago, and she was always talking about business because she's got Businesswomen Rock. I think that's her show. But when she came on mine, I knew that she was big into like spirituality, and we sort of went down there. She started talking about her meditation practice, and it was so just heartwarming because at the end she's like, "Wow, I don't think I've ever talked a lot about that stuff, that aspect of my life on a show." And we were at a conference, and she told her husband, she's like, "You got to listen to this episode." He's like, "Oh, I've heard you on other podcasts." He's like, "No, but you haven't heard me talk about this." And so that's what's cool about it. Like the ability to let your personal life and your personal dreams and aspirations and the things that light you up, like sort of weaving those into what you normally do. And so even with my business, like I started out helping entrepreneurs and brands build and produce podcasts, but now I'm thinking about like I want to put the beacon out. Like I want to help like spiritual folks, just produce a podcast. I want to start doing that and supporting that community and be known as the, if you've got a spiritual business and you want to do a podcast, like work with Harry because he understands, he'll speak your language. And so I always believe in like, the universe is always listening. So I'm just like, I'm putting the intention out there. And especially on this show, like what better show to put that intention out on, right?
Seriously. So what do you think? So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that you could actually be a bridge for spiritual people to speak words that actually land on the ears of the right people.
Yeah.
What do you think is the gap? Like, you've been watching this for a while, and you're in this conversation of being a bridge and, helping people reach their market. So what is it that is the gap?
I think it's in the beginning, I think it's a relationship that folks in the spiritual community have with money, and then thoughts about abundance versus scarcity, and thinking, there's some people have misconceptions that money is bad and it's money is the root of all evil. But and in the beginning, I like it was just like weird for me to think about that. I'm like, what's the purpose? And what's my relationship with money, and how do I want to be intentional about it, and just do practice and learning a lot, and reading, and aligning with people. I've gradually just started to come to the understanding that currency is current, right? And we need money to do that. Right now, we're in a monetary system that, unfortunately, I can't give you 15 energy credits, to
Yeah.
to have you help me with my business, and you can't pay me like pay me back in energy credits. Like we're there. We know that those civilizations and those types of things existed in past civilizations and ancient civilizations and the other dimensions, but unfortunately that's not happening here. So we have to work with the tools that we have here. And there's, as much as we can leverage the system to our benefit, but then just bless the activity that's happening. So part of my intentions, like I have personal intentions and spiritual intentions, and I have business specific intentions about abundance. And I'm like, thank you, currency, for showing up in my life. Thank you for always being present, and thank you for filling up my bank account. And I would promise to consciously use you and respect you in the way and honor you. And so things like that. And I have an abundance mindset intention. And so I'm clear about the good that I want to do, and the people that I want to help. And in this where we are right now, we need money to do that. So it's just understanding that it's an energy exchange, and who do you want to exchange that energy with. And so in the spiritual community, I think it's people who don't know a lot about business as well, or even digital marketing. Like I had to learn all this stuff in the beginning. I came from a 9 to 5 corporate job where I thought money came from like a direct deposit into your bank account every 2 weeks. Like that's exactly how it works. And so you can be sure that that was a pretty rude awakening when I was starting my business. And that one time, like when that first time it happens, where you're like, the 2 weeks go by and nothing shows up in your bank account. You're like, oh, like I have to create this, and I have to do this, and I have to like, it's the entrepreneurial's journey. But I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, I got so much to learn. And there's a famous inspirational speaker by the name of Jim Rohn, and he says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so that's just I repeat that quote ad nauseum, and Tony Robbins even learned from him. So I was just like, wow, who do I need to surround myself with to learn this stuff? And so I started paying like coaches like a lot of money to like be in these rooms with these people who are making 6 figures, 7 figures a year. And I was like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that from your home? And like you have like 2 employees. Like this is like Narnia basically. Like you open the door, you went in, you're like, whoa, this world exists. And thankfully some of those people are my friends. And so now I want to learn the lessons that they taught me, and now help the spiritual community to like have that same mindset. Like, yes, you can have a business, and if you're doing good, charge your $33, charge your $111, charge your $144. Like, use the combination of what we learn, what we know about spirituality and the power of numbers, and use that to like charge the exchanges we're going to happen, so that we can do good in this world.
That's so funny that you say that because I actually started getting that download too. The same thing. Like I would start pricing programs and I'd be like, oh, it needs to be 144. And I'd be like, well, why does it need to be 144? And I would go look it up and I'm like, well, of course it does. And
Yeah,
then
of
I was like, oh,
course.
this one needs to be 177. I'd be like, well, why does it have to be 177? And I'll go look it up. And then like the same program needs to change in 2020. It needs to be 222. And I'm like, well, why does it need to be 222? So I haven't looked it up yet, but I'm sure there's a really good reason why in
Oh yeah.
2020, the same program is now 222. So it's like, it becomes like, it's a no, it doesn't even matter. Like your logical brain, you know, wants to put, my logical brain is geared toward from all this domestication, right? All of us.
Yes.
From all the conditioning, the domestication, and everything, like this is the price, and then it's this price because it has this much value because you did this degree and you did this and you did that, and then you lump it all together, and then there's this price, or like because this is what you charge per hour, and then you have to break it up, and then that's what. No, like none of that. Like it's all gone now. No, and it's totally irrational to the left brain, and it's like spirit centered.
Yeah.
Whatever the spirit says, the price.
Totally.
Like, period.
Yeah, and you get better at it, and if you set your intention about what, you know, I've been there's a business coach by the name of Hiro Boga. I don't know if you've heard of her, but
No.
she talks about the business diva, and it's a pretty high price service. It's crazy how much she's charging and how dialed in, and she's had some pretty high end folks that work with her, but we're talking like thousands of dollars for like hour-long sessions. But she's just, I just get the sense that she knows what her time is worth and what the energy exchange is worth, and there's no shame in, like, you know, there's no right price point. And so I resonate with that stuff a lot. But she talks about this idea of a business diva, like your business is an entity and you are partnering together as an entity to do what you want to do. So what's the mission and what's the purpose and what are the values of your business, and then together you're partnering. So you it's almost like it doesn't exist. And and then one of my other teachers that I follow, Lisa Renee, the site's called Energetic Synthesis, and they talk about the law of structure, which is important to think about. Like when you create an entity, when you create a business, you're creating a structure. And so in the same way that you would bless your house and you'd be like, you know,
Yes.
clear the room, and just, you know, the way we started this call, what are our intentions? Like you do that with your business too. Like what's the intentions for this business? Like who do we want to attract? Who are we for and who are we not for? And so being conscious of that, and then like when you create a program or when you create a course, you're like, who is this course for? And that's something I'm just getting started into, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's a great reminder for me, because I want to be conscious of that. Like, and what would the price of this be? And you know, what is a way that's can get it into the most people's hands, while also recognizing that if people see the value in it, then they'll want to compensate you accordingly, and they'll find a way to like increase the abundance in their lives so they can participate in this like abundance stream.
Yeah, and it's also like, who do you serve? So
Yes.
you can't, I've just learned you cannot follow any formulas. There are no formulas, you know, that work across the board. You have to tune into your own station and your own channel and your own business as an extension of that, and who you serve. And then it's a reciprocity with you and who you serve, and like the lessons you're there to bring them through, right? So I have to stay in my lane, basically. You know, and I can change my lane if I want to, but when my soul wants to, you know, basically, let's be honest, you know, like
Yeah.
Carrie Hummingbird personality isn't going to change any lanes without the soul. But
How do you know that? How do you know when you're in your lane and when you're not?
I feel it in the energy. Like I feel it discordant. Like sometimes I'll get people that are trying to coach me into like, oh, you need to like really like triple your price on this or something like that, or you need to go after this kind of client instead because they have money and da 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 da.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, okay. So I do have a few clients in that camp, but like if I'm meant to serve this community, then I'm operating within the paradigm of as a bridge to this community to help them lift to the next place. So, you know, we're all lifting in this group together to the next place. Now I'm over here, I'm kind of in the middle, but I'm working with them to bridge them, and then I'm working with them to bridge them to the next highest place. So there's some times where it comes up where I find that part of my feeling of not alignment has to do with some egoic resistance or something like that. But then there's other times where it's like, no, this is flat out what I'm supposed to be doing. So the model they're suggesting doesn't actually work for me. It's not what I'm here to do. And then there's a certain amount of humility that comes into that, because my soul is, pretty experienced, and, non-attachment to, tons of material comfort, is also part of the journey. I think that we can't get too wrapped up in, like, the only way this is a success is if it, like, has, 7 figures. That isn't all what it's about. It's about the impact you're making in the world, and who you're making the impact for, that you're supposed to make the impact for. And then you're provided for. You're comfortable, you're provided for.
Yeah, it'll come to you when it's supposed to. And I think it's a matter of like, I mean, when you say that, I get the feeling like if I need, if I can do something good with the 7 figures, then the 7 figures will come. If I'm
It'll
clear
show
about,
up.
yeah, if I'm clear about what I want to do and what I would want to build. And I've been thinking about this, like I've never owned a home, and I was like, I don't want to like, buy into this like banking system and all this sort of stuff. But something that I heard recently was this idea of like would this community, like the spiritual community, like needs to own property. Like literally it's important, because the things we want to do and the communities we want to build, like we don't want to do it on rented land, and we don't want to do it, and we don't want to do it in a place where the owners are someone who is not aligned with our mission. That's going to
Yes.
pull the rug out. So I've been conscious of that, like just that message. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I never thought about it that way until recently. And I was like, it makes sense, because if we're going to build or support people that are building like these conscious communities, or just have land to donate that no one's going to mess with, if people want to, like, I think of the things that can be done if we're aligned in our intentions, and the people who have the ability to generate massive abundance, I think they want to do good things too. And so I think we need more people like that, and just to let people know that yes, it is a good thing, and yes, we can all put that intention to good use.
Yeah, and I feel like you can think of it kind of like we're all working on the same puzzle. Like there's a big puzzle called shifting the Earth into the age of Aquarius. It's just like on a global scale.
Yep. Yep.
And there's, probably 10% of the planet's engaged in that process, and the rest of everybody else is just going along, just or completely oblivious to the thing that's happening. So there's like 10% of the population that's like collaborating to put the puzzle together, and we all have a different piece. Like you said, somebody might have the piece of, oh, I got the download, I needed to build this spiritual center. Oh, I need
Mhm.
funding, I need to get a piece of land. They got the clear download, and then somebody else says, I got the download that all this money I made, I need to invest that in something conscious. And those two people meet, and bam, now they have the center. And then me, I go, I got the download, I need to help all these people through some teachings, and I need to help them to transcend this whole matrix and step into prosperity. Oh, well, now I'm going to do a class at the center. So I think we all, we're all fulfilling different little pieces of that puzzle.
Yeah, and I think the more we have conversations like this, the more people listen to these types of conversations, they know that they don't feel like they're all alone. And
Yes.
there's always someone who needs to hear this message at this point in time. And it's like the catalyst for them to like that step that you were thinking about. Like if you're listening now and you were on the fence about something, there's something in this conversation right now that's resonating with you. And you're like, okay, this is exactly like you were waiting for a message from the universe, and this podcast episode is it.
Yeah, and it says, do the thing, do your piece, so that the next piece can happen, and you and the other person that are collaborating on that piece can do the bigger piece, and we can get that side of the puzzle completed. Because you got to do the edges, and then you go to the center. Or sometimes people go to the center and they come to the edges. So either way, we'll meet in the middle, right? We're all working this together.
And as a podcaster, we always like to know that we're affecting and doing good things with our podcast episodes. So if that is the case, then I'm sure Carrie would appreciate a little tweet or an email. So like, yes, that was the episode. Thank you. And so,
Yeah, and leave
so
a
we know we're
review
doing the
on
right thing.
iTunes.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking of which, yes, please, please leave a review on iTunes. Please check out Harry's podcast too, because you've probably, I'm just guessing that I took a quick glance. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of diversity here. So you just like, what, anything is open, right?
Yeah, the only common ground is that it started with just podcasters, and then in the beginning I'm like, well, they have to have 50 plus episodes because I want to talk to people who are serious. But at the end of the day, again, it's my podcast, my show, my rules, and I was like, I started just scratching my own itch, and I met a woman who had a podcast called Women of Hollywoodland, and she told the story of these women who basically helped start Hollywood, and no one knows a lot about them. And it's like one of the major agencies, like CAA or something, was started by a woman or something like that. And every episode was like a whole hour about one woman who helped like build the Hollywood. And I was like, that's so awesome. Come on the show. And then I saw in a Twitter feed that someone by the name of like Susie Buttress had the Casual Birder Pod. And I was like, you have a podcast about bird watching? And I was like, I want to talk to you. It's like, this was like literally like on Twitter. And she was like, come on the show. And so we came on, and she became like an awesome podcast guest. I just had today, I had a round two conversation with Patrick Keller, who hosts the Big Seance podcast, and he was a super early fan of the show, and he basically was a fan of the show, and he listened to every episode. And I had heard that or saw that. I'm like, come on my show. And now he's like my I call him my super fan, because I do something called the retention hashtag at the end of each podcast episode, and you have to tweet about it if you heard it, and occasionally, it's just a little fun thing to do to see if people listen to the end. And he's always like, almost all the time, he's one of the first people to like, you can see on Twitter, like when the episode goes live, he's the first one. He listens and he puts the retention hashtag in Twitter, which I think is
Wow,
fun.
that is a cool idea, Harry.
Yeah.
Wow, that is
And
so.
you're more than welcome to steal it and use
So
it
you
and
change it every
repurpose it.
time, so they have to listen to the end to get
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
hashtag
So
it?
I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. So he's like Big Seance Pod, so paranormal. So I'm like paranormal Patrick, hashtag paranormal Patrick. I just something that has to do with the episode or something like that. It's a fun thing. People love like these little Easter eggs.
Yeah.
I used to like listen to podcast episodes, and sometimes it keeps playing because you don't have the pause button handy, and you would hear the guest come on after like 5 seconds of silence. You'd be like, you still there? Hey, I just want to say hi. Like it's like a weird little thing. Sometimes in some of these Marvel movies, we've been watching a
Oh,
lot of Marvel
yeah, because
movies.
it's still
Like
going on.
the credits are
The
done,
credits already scrolled?
and then they
Yeah.
show like a little snippet of something. Like I was like, oh, that's so cool. So it's like a little like thing for your like super fans, and like if they know, it's one of those things like those inside jokes, and like oh, the community knows.
All right, so we're gonna do one for this episode. We're getting near the end, so let's see. We're gonna do Pound Magic Harry.
Okay. Perfect.
Magic Harry, hashtag Magic Harry. That's it.
Okay.
That is it. And you do that, then you're gonna be a super fan.
Yeah,
Shout
officially
you
super
out.
fan.
I'm gonna shout you
Yes.
out in the next episode. You do that. Awesome. I love it. Wow, that's great. That's fun. I like it because it's fun, Harry. I like it
Yeah.
because it's a game. This whole thing can be a game. This whole game of life could just be a fun game. It's just a puzzle. It's a fun thing. We do it together. It doesn't have to be all hard and heavy. It can be fun.
Yeah, and I think for those times when it is hard and heavy, just this too shall pass. Like think about why I was there. Like I mean, I literally know that I came here with the purpose of like living through everything that I lived, and I I just picture myself as just like this light being. We're hanging out with these other my light being posse, and they're like, who's going who's going down to Earth next? And I'm like, oh, I'm going, and they're like, okay, here's the menu, like it's like a menu of things. Okay, you've got to go through heartbreak. You've got to go through. You got to betray someone, so you know what that feels like. You've got to go through pain. You've got to go through loss. You've got to go through scarcity, and they're like, here's these 15 things. And I was like, cool, I want to do all these things. This is going to be so much fun to like experience it. And they're like, oh, by the way, you're going to forget everything. You're going to forget we even had this conversation. You're not going to remember. Like, you're literally not going to remember. I'm like, no, I'm cool with that. Like, no, you won't. Like, you're going to forget where you came from. But you're going to do it. And because this is what you literally signed up for this. And I was like, all right, cool. And then, boom, born. And I had a ayahuasca ceremony where I saw the moment where I picked my parents, which was
Oh,
bananas.
that is cool.
Yeah, that was so wild. And so like I'm conscious of what's happened, and I've done enough like spirituality work to realize like I it's in my intentions that um I chose this life because I wanted to. And so all these things that I'm going through, all these ups and downs and dark nights of the soul, and just like they've been the toughest thing I could ever imagine. Like, and to the point where some of the times you're on your knees praying to God, and just like, but you realize like if you can get through it and you can find a community to support you and you can find a practice to support you. That's why my meditations and intentions in the morning are like the most important thing. Like if I don't do them, I'm off. Like I'm just like
Mhm.
I need that grounding, and I need it every single day. And so it's just a, if you're listening to this and this resonates with you, just realize that even through the bad times, like there's people that want to support you. There's people that have your back. And if you put that energetic clarion call out loud enough, like it's going to be heard. And there's a community waiting to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Harry, that's why I published my book this year, The Second Wave, which I channeled, from my guide, White
Mm,
Eagle. Is I didn't even know I was going to do that this year. And then bam, here's the book. And it's because people need this message right now. A lot of people forgot that they signed up for this tour of
yeah.
duty.
Yeah. They do. Most of us, I think
Forget
99% of the population forgot.
Earth amnesia, you know? And you like get in the body and you're like, gosh, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. Even if
Yeah,
you remembered, you would still be like, gosh, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. Why did I sign up for this? And
totally.
it's challenging, but we're making a huge shift. Like this is the most exciting time to be on the planet right now because we're
Yeah.
making this tremendous shift from one consciousness structure into like almost the polar opposite, like a completely different way of being. Like it's amazing actually to be part of this right now.
Yeah, it's definitely the most exciting time to be on this planet. And I'm a fan of like everything, like again, rabbit hole, ancient civilizations going back hundreds of thousands, millions of years. And I'm just like, and everything you read about is like everyone in the cosmos is excited about what's happening here as well.
Yeah,
So
and
this
we don't,
is
and it's a big experiment. That's the other thing. It's like
yeah,
we're all doing it together. We're co-creating this. We don't know what's going to happen.
yeah,
We're just making this stuff up as we go along. I mean,
yeah. And I think the key is just being conscious about what we do and the decisions we're making.
yeah, and it's like as White Eagle said in the book, it's like it's time to close the book of fate, which is the wounded story. Like I am, this is awful, and I'm stuck here and I'm powerless, and la 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 la. Like the personality story, and like step into like the destiny story, which is, oh my God, I'm a conscious divine being of choice, sovereign in a body on the earth at this time. Wow.
How awesome is that?
That's like cool. I can create anything I want. And we're stepping into creation mode. Like, this is great. I can manifest stuff. All this ancient technology coming back up, and
Hmm.
I can create anything I want. That's the exciting part.
Like this conversation.
Yeah, we're creating this together right now. See, we thought we were going one direction, then we went this other direction. And then we went another direction, and then we went that direction. So we don't have to know what we're doing. Not all who wander are lost.
Hmm. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, we're heading wherever it is we're going. And the whole thing is to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Harry. This has been great. I really enjoyed our interview together. I'm sure we could, now that you mentioned all those things, that you kind of zinged those in like right at the end. Like we could, I mean, so many tangents we could have gone, and you were like, oh, we kept it kind of tame, and then for a while, and then like zing, like there's a cool topic, and then zing. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
cool.
these could be, I mean, I always like I mentioned Joe Rogan, but just because he creates a 3 hour platform, because he's like, you can't really go deep until you start going, if you have these 15-minute, 30-minute interviews, like people will just tell you like surface stuff. They're not going to go deep. So mine are always an hour because I know at least an hour because I'm like, you need time to like get into it and have people feel comfortable and give them a safe space and a safe container to like start to open up and to start to tell stories and to realize that like they're not going to be judged. And I mean part of my dream is to just kind of have these types of conversations and have all of them be like 3 hours. And if it's not for everyone, if you're interested, then you're going to listen. If not, it's not for you. So I think we're going to start to see more of that, like the spiritual Joe Rogans just coming on and just be like, look, we're gonna go call it the rabbit hole. Like that's what it's going to be.
Well, and that's like the opposite of what's happening right now out there in the culture, Harry. It's like people can't even pay attention for like 5 seconds now.
Yeah.
It's down to something obscene like that. It's like I have 5 seconds of attention span or 2. Like, and I was like, my episodes are an hour, so like
Yeah.
I guess you'll drop off if you can't handle it. I mean, I started doing little teaser bits in the beginning just to kind of tease people in, like this
Mm-hmm.
is what the show is going to be about. I think I got that from that conference. So
Yeah, it's not like a cold open. We pull like a, we do it when we produce shows, like a 15-second, 20-second soundbite. I was just like, oh, have the idea is to get people to lean in. It's like, oh, that's interesting. One, that sounds like a good conversation.
yeah, so they get over that initial like I only have 5 seconds thing. Because really, if you only have 5 seconds, that's really sad. If that's it,
This is not for you. Yeah, the ADD and yeah, and it's something that I'm conscious of, like especially with the phones and all stuff, and just like I'm trying. I turned off all my almost all of the alerts on my phone because it's a Pavlovian response. Like literally, like when it dings, you're like you immediately like look at it, or you feel it, or you feel the vibration, and you're like, oh, am I missing something? Is that a phone call, or is that a tweet, or is that a Facebook message, or is that an Instagram? Like
and your
it
brain
was.
starts
Oh
processing on
yeah,
that.
yeah. There's this yeah, because we have to, especially when we're doing work, like we're trying, there's a good book that keeps popping up recently called Deep Work by Cal Fussman, and this idea of like focused 90-minute, 3-hour long stretches of like work are much, much, much more productive because the pinging back and forth, like you think you're just going to check something for a minute or two, but for your mind to cognitively get back in the mode of the work takes another 5 or 10 minutes. So you've actually lost like 15, 20 minutes for each like 2 or 3 minutes of like being distracted. So that's been something I'm trying to be better at. Just when I have to do something like it's going to take a little bit of focus, I try to make sure like I if I can just do full screen and just be like, okay, I'm just going to work on this and just put some music on in the background. So again, work in progress, don't always succeed, and so trying to do the best I can
Yeah,
in the moment.
stay in your lane, stay in your focus, stay in your lane, or go down rabbit holes. You know, because actually, if you stay down the lane, you can go down the rabbit hole, which is really fun. You know, if you get the deep work, that's when the rabbit hole happens, and that's just like
Yeah,
fantastic,
yeah, that's so true.
unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, when I go deep on topics sometimes and you're just like in that Zen quiet mode, you're just like you're getting those ahas, or it's like when people say like you had an idea in the shower because your body's relaxed, like you're vulnerable, but you're just like you feel you could when you got to think of something, the best thing to do is get away from the computer, like go for a walk or just jump in the lake or take a shower or just something because you need to get the other part of the brain working that is the one that allows you to connect to source to give you that divine inspiration of just like, okay, you got all the logical stuff. Now I'm going to tell you how to apply it in the real world. And I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I'm in a meditation. I'm just like, whoa, I just have an idea. Like, and then sometimes I have to like write it down, like mid meditation. It sort of throws me off a bit, but I'm like, I'm going to lose this idea. So hold on one second, source. I got to jot this down. I got to put it in my offline brain. So, but that's just a sign that it's like, oh, the channel is open. So I am getting a message. So respecting it, honoring it, I'm doing that more as opposed to just like, no, I'm just going to ignore it and just, you know, you're getting the message. So, honor it and see what you can do with it later.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly what I did whenever I did my channeling for my book, is I just created these really long sessions, or like I'd be meditating and wondering like what's next in the book or what's the next thing, and I'd be like, and then it would start coming in, I'd be like, oh, wait a second, I'll go get my computer, and then it's like, and just let it all out, like just be writing and I wouldn't even let myself read it, because if I let myself read the
Oh
words and
yeah,
I'm caught in the thing, and I was like, no,
totally.
just like totally let it come out and don't even read it, like just know that there's words being typed.
How good did your typing skills get at that point?
Pretty good. I could type without looking at the keys, but like
Yeah,
every so often my eyes will kind of like go to look into the word, and I'd be like, don't worry about it, I'll fix it
yeah.
later. Like I just, don't worry if the word's misspelled, you know what it says. You want to get it out, it's just
I'm so
important to
great.
get it out.
I'm so grateful. I was in high school in the 80s, and for some reason I went to an all boys Catholic high school, but one of the classes was typing.
Thank goodness
So
for that, huh?
well, yeah,
Life
because
skills.
moving into the computer age, like I can't imagine people who didn't learn how to type. Like it's crazy. Like there's still, it's an older generation. Just I've seen people occasionally with like
Checking.
the two fingers. I was like, whoa, I'm so, because it's just when you need to get content out, when you need to get a message out, that's so frustrating because sometimes you can't write as fast, and seems like typing is the fastest way.
Yeah, because when Spirit's downloading messages through you, like you gotta like, it's a flood, you know, you're like, wait a second, let me just get my fingers typing, you know,
I've been
trying to
there.
come out. Yeah,
So
it's
cool.
cool. That's great. Wow, what a great, lots of, I don't even know what to title this, Harry, because normally like I have a really clear title, but right now I'm just like, I don't even know what to call it.
It'll
It's
come
an
to you.
awesome conversation though, really good.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And it's a nice way to talk about these topics and just kind of, lift the vibration of, for us and for everyone that's listening, and just in general, anytime we have these types of conversations, we're just like in general lifting the overall vibration of the planet. So I think it's a good thing.
Conversations that lift. Yeah. Hey, maybe that's the name of it. I like that. Conversations
See,
that lift.
it
See?
just comes to you. Yeah.
It just like, bam, there it was. Awesome. Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I look forward to being on your show and telling all my crazy zany stories about channeling and ascended masters and ayahuasca and,
That'll be
stuff.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And so remember, everybody, the magic hashtag is Magic Harry. And when you put it out there, you're going to be spotlighted on my next show as a super fan for catching it.
What's your Twitter handle?
Carrie Hummingbird. Oh, I also have Soul Nectar Show too.
Okay, so tag Soul Nectar Show, Carrie
So
Hummingbird,
yeah, Soul Nectar Show.
podcast _junkies
Yeah.
on Twitter, and then we'll see it,
Then we'll see it.
and
We'll know that
we'll
you
know
did
that.
it.
Yeah, and
Shout you out.
we'll give you the energetic wink. Be like, okay.
Yeah. We'll give you the thanks. We'll give you more kisses. So we're actually going to give people kisses. But before I do, I will make another plug to please leave us a review on iTunes. Because the more reviews, iTunes does a funny little thing where they need a lot of reviews and a lot of people saying that it's great before they like promote it out. And a lot of people tuning in and downloading and all that kind of stuff. So when you leave a review, you help more people to find it and more people to download episodes. And then iTunes goes, oh, maybe this is good, good content because it's a popularity game. So we'd appreciate that help to get it out.
And make sure you subscribe. And that's really important too,
Subscribe,
because
yeah.
that way, whatever podcast app you use, the show's now available. I'm sure it's found on all of them, so there's no excuse now. Google, Android, whatever. So one of the best things you can do for a podcaster, coming from a podcaster, is to not only write the review, but also to subscribe to the show and tell a friend, tell at least one friend about the Carrie Hummingbird Show and the Soul Nectar Show and Carrie Hummingbird and Harry Duran, and say, I heard this awesome conversation. You got to listen to the show. So that's my podcast hat on to for
Yeah, and
promo.
no, and that's it. No, but that's great actually, Harry, because also share this out with anybody who is looking to get their voice out and their message out, and they're just like have some trepidation, they don't know how to do it, or they feel awkward, or everybody feels awkward when they start doing these, right, Harry? I mean, like I used to listen back to my first couple ones, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh, face
Yeah,
plant,
we've all been there.
But you just, you keep going. It's just your self-judgment. It's your little ego that's like, see, you shouldn't have done it. And so don't listen to your ego.
And if
Just
anyone's looking to start a podcast, there's I'll give you a link to a handout. It's a PDF. It gives them guidance on like equipment
cool.
and where to host and all the beginner stuff that I didn't know at the beginning. It's I call it the ultimate podcast launch game plan. So
perfect. Where do people get that from?
If you go to FullCast, it's fullcast.co, and we'll make a special link. We'll call it fullcast.co/ what should we use? Soul Nectar? Soul Nectar. Okay, so fullcast.co/ Soul Nectar, and you can download it for free there.
Awesome. And I'll add that to the show notes too. So great. Look at that, you guys. You just got a free thing. You just got like how to start your podcast. It's amazing. You get your voice out there too. And then I'll be like hashtagging you. So kisses now. That's the end. We're going to give kisses. You ready to give kisses with me? I give kisses.
Let's give kisses.
All right. Kisses. Here they come, people. Mwah. Blessings to you guys. Have a great week. And thank you for joining us on Soul Nectar Show. Bye.
Bye.